Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
We had some fun, didn't we, the other day at the convention center for the festival for the big game, and we were so happy that we got White Spot delivered right to our table there on Radio Row.
By the Moj. You know how
the wonders never
Moj
cease.
Loves to feed the people.
We're sorry to dangle this in front of you, Jeff, but it happened. It wasn't off the comfort menu. It was a burger, but
I was going to say, so help me, if there were mini Yorkies involved.
No mini Yorkies. You'll have to go to White Spot. Visit your local White Spot today. Check out the comfort menu. If you see the forecast for the storm coming over the next 48 hours, you'll want the comfort of mini Yorkies, braised beef, burgers, pot roast, and chicken pot pie.
Bomb cyclones and mini Yorkies. Match made it.
I tell you guys,
That's what
I
they
keep
say, right?
Every other home game here. It feels like I need to stop by White Spot on my way home for a little bit of comfort. Yeah.
That should be the line. You're right. The way this hockey team is playing, you need the comfort menu. Visit your local White Spot today.
Oh, my. Yeah, a bomb cyclone last night at Rogers Arena where the Nashville Predators come in and just steal 2 points from the Vancouver Canucks. A busy weekend for them, Jeff, with the win against Chicago.
But not
Saturday.
an excuse. The busy weekend is not the excuse, right, Jeff?
No, I mean, as back-to-backs go, they don't come a whole lot easier than that on paper at the very least. I mean, starting the weekend, this was team 31 and 32 in the National Hockey League standings. And don't get fooled by the 4-1 scoreline against Chicago on Saturday. 2 late empty net goals. Like, that's a 2-1 game that was hanging in the balance against a brutal Blackhawks team. And then, first back-to-back of the season for the Canucks. Sure, it's going to be a challenge. It always is. And more than back-to-back, it's 3 and 4, it's 4 and 6. And so, sure, there may be some fatigue really for the first time all season, and perhaps that played into it. But 11 minutes to get their first shot on goal against the lowly Preds. And even at that, it was a 63-foot wrist shot from Carson Soucy. So sluggish starts have been an issue for the Canucks. They got scored on first in both games. Ilya Mikheyev, of all people, potting his second of the season on Saturday. Now the Canucks responded and recovered and took over that hockey game. And even last night, guys, it's like, yeah, they give up the first goal. They tie the game. They get out of the first period in a 1-1 tie. Paterson with the one-time bomb. We've all been waiting for that shot. They had a 2-1 lead halfway through last night's hockey game and still just can't find a way. And for me, one of the turning points, and look, there's a lot to get into, and I'm sure we'll talk JT Miller in a sec, but it's been a struggle for Nils Höglander. We know that. He can't be batting a puck over the glass for no reason. It wasn't with his stick, with his hand. You've just taken your first lead of the night. You have some momentum, a little bit of life in the building, and then just an undisciplined, sort of foolish penalty by Höglander puts the Predators in the power play, and Steven Stamkos got his night started then. So, there's just too many breakdowns, and I thought that was one last night that maybe there's brighter flashpoints, but again, they had done well to dig themselves out of the 1-0 deficit, take a lead, and then put the Preds on the power play, and that's sort of started the snowball rolling downhill for them there.
We'll ask you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question as a way of entering a JT Miller conversation. Did Miller deserve to get benched last night, Jeff?
Yeah, I think he did. He was not impacting that hockey game, and I thought Rick Tocchet's description about just wasn't one of the guys he thought was going to lead them back. Now, I do wonder, you start the benching at 4-2, and then Kiefer Sherwood scores. All of a sudden, it's a 1-goal game. You're back in it, and one of the guys that has the potential to score you that tying goal like he did on opening night against Calgary is JT Miller. But I think Tocchet felt he had to stick to his guns and send a message, and 2 points in November be damned if this is part of the long-term play here. Yeah, the message is obviously to Miller, but it's got to be to everybody else. If you can scratch or sit JT Miller, then anybody else can get the treatment. The question is, will others now? Like, has Tocchet opened the door here? Because it's fine to sit JT Miller for part of a period, but why in the world does Rick Tocchet continue to roll out Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers as a pair to start every game and then gets to a point where he realizes this just isn't working again tonight, and then they split them up? So you wonder, will there be a drastic decision coming on the back end at some point? But look, for JT Miller, you can't be the guy that's barking instructions on the penalty kill and pointing to everybody else, telling them where to go, and then you're not moving your feet, you're standing still. And I think that kind of was the trigger for Tocchet. He had seen enough at that point, and Miller doesn't play much in the third period, 11 minutes and change, a season low in ice time. So It's kind of ironic that if you remember, guys, back early last season, it was a home game against Nashville where JT Miller got parked at the end of the bench for part of the second period. So he's been down this road before, and obviously he responded with a big offensive season, but there was a moment in time last year against the Predators where Rick Tocchet didn't like what he saw from JT Miller. So, look, it's been way too quiet around Miller. Last 10 games, 2 goals, both of them into empty nets. That's it. That's the contribution. So clearly he's missing Brock Besser. This team is missing Brock Besser, maybe even more than they thought when their leading goal scorer went out and hasn't been seen on the 5-game homestand here. So I had no issues whatsoever. Now it's on JT Miller to respond, and we'll see if the message gets through against the Rangers on Tuesday night.
We don't know what this injury is, if he has one, and if a couple of days are even going to do him any good. But we certainly, I think Matt and I were both, like if anybody needs a maintenance day, like you used maintenance days for other guys, why wouldn't you do that on Friday, for instance, for JT Miller? Again, who knows if that even has any impact on whatever is bothering him. But if the options are, I'm going to bench him and we'll be down a forward, or we could give this guy some rest and try to get him up to speed, playing through it is not always the best form for a team, for a player.
No, for sure. And we know that Friday's practice was a fairly physical practice, and he was involved, and Tocchet was trying to send a message to get his guys engaged. Like, it does, like, he just doesn't look like the JT Miller that we all know can command a hockey game and take it on by himself. And it's been far too long since we've left the building and thought, hands down, he was the best player on the ice. So I'm with you. And I would take it a step further, even, that if there is something that's holding him back and limiting, and I think there is, and he said to Ian McIntyre last week that he's still playing through whatever it was that was bothering him in the preseason. It's so tough to sort of reconcile, because you're right. He's out there at every practice. He's suiting up for every game. This is the NHL. If you're in uniform, there can be expectations that you can play to some level, even if you're trying to play through something. But how about this? Like, if it is limiting him, you had the Blackhawks and the Predators on back-to-back nights. Like, sit him for one or both of those games. You're telling me, in hindsight, the Canucks couldn't got a result in one of the 2 games without JT Miller against bottom feeders? I think they could have. So it is strange. And it just kind of feels like this idea, like, I get it, big hockey macho guys, like, you got to play through it. But if you're not helping the hockey club, then really, what are we doing here?
Dollywell says it's a shoulder. I mean, that tracks everything.
It's
about
the kind of feel.
Yeah. And no, Jeff's absolutely right. Like, he copped to an injury earlier last week. So, like, there is something there. This isn't just JT Miller's play has fallen off the map for no other, like, age or any kind of reason.
But Rick Tocchet doesn't seem to be too sympathetic for the players that are playing through things, is he? He's pretty ruthless. If you're not playing well, I don't care why, I'm going to hold you accountable for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely seems to be the playbook that he's coming from. But again, to what end? Is it helping the hockey club? It doesn't seem to be helping JT Miller right now. It's not happening for him. He's not able to do the things that JT Miller does when he's at the top of his game. And as I said, it's pretty clear that he's missing Brock Besser. He's got a very raw rookie on his line. And, even look, Lekaramaki, it's been a terrific week for him to get his NHL feet wet, to score his first goal. But his first look at NHL action on back-to-back nights, he was silent last night, like a lot of guys. He hasn't blown us out of the water, I don't think. 1 goal in 4 games and no shots on goal last night. So as long as Besser's out, I think Lekaramaki stays up. But I'm still of the opinion that when Brock Besser comes back, whenever that is, that Lekaramaki's not finished in the American Hockey League. Like, if there's going to be quiet nights, then I still think he can develop and grow and could probably benefit from some time down in the minors. But it doesn't sound like Besser's back anytime soon, so that's probably not a bridge that anybody has to cross for a little while yet.
Paterson, he's off social media. He told Swedish reporters or Swedish paper that he's off social media, and game looks better.
He's going to miss, then, the fact that we're saying he's playing good. He's not on social media. He won't get that.
That was my first thing. Is like, do you think Elias? That was my first question. Like, do you believe it? Like, do you think Elias is in a place now where he's finally ignoring the noise?
I mean, the evidence would suggest so. He's going to miss highlights of his one-timer, though, if he's off social media entirely. I would sit and watch that on a loop, quite frankly. It was great to see. And, the puck comes to him. didn't like the first option. So over to Quinn and then back to change the angle and then put the hammer down. Like, I liked a lot about that sequence. And yeah, I mean, scores on back-to-back nights, the bank power play, he got a bounce. Maybe he was due for a bounce on Saturday, whatever the case. He scored in 5 of the last 7 games the Canucks have played. So these are all really encouraging signs. We're starting to see some of the things that have made him a special player through the years. But even in saying that, he still hasn't had this massive explosive game on the score sheet, right? Like we talked last week about, hey, back-to-back 2-point games. That seemed like a real leap for him. And it was great. And he is picking up points along the way, but he still has yet to have one of those nights where he's just unstoppable, that there's nothing the other team can do. And at the end of the night, it's a 3 or 4 point night. So maybe some baby steps here, whatever the case. In the here and now, yeah, I mean, let's put him over in a silo of things that we don't have to worry about really for the first time this season. And then there's just too many flashpoints elsewhere in this lineup at both ends of the ice. And again, this is just too tough a league to think that you can get away with 10 minutes or 20 minutes as a team. They still, like on this homestand, have yet to put together anything that looks like a convincing full 60-minute effort. And that was even the case here over the weekend against a couple of bottom feeders.
Are you equally as concerned about offense and defense? Because, as much as the defense is absolutely giving teams way too much and putting too much on the goalie, they're not scoring a ton of goals either. So I like the focus should almost be dual here for the Vancouver Canucks.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, Blake, because yes, I mean, the mistakes and the issues defensively are loud, they're bright, they're shiny, and they've had everybody's attention, but they've also kind of masked some of these individual performances. We talk about JT and his 2 empty net goals in 10. Connor Garland has 1 goal in his last 12 games. Nobody's ever going to knock Connor Garland's effort and hustle, but for what he means to this team and the start that he had, his only goal was in Los Angeles, and Darcy Kemper put it in the net himself. Like, Connor Garland hasn't put a puck in the net himself in a couple of weeks now. And then go down the line here, like Nils Höglander has gone, 12 or 13 games without a goal. Jake DeBrusk still hasn't scored a goal on home ice. They've played 10 games now at Rogers Arena. And for everybody talking about how streaky he is, well, it's time for him to get streaking in the right direction again after scoring the 3-3 on the California road trip. But he's been held off the score sheet. In fact, I mean, they're 5 games into this homestand, guys. There are 2 forwards that have scored more than 1 goal. Pia Suter has 2, and Elias Pettersson has 4 on the homestand. Eric Brandstrom has a couple of goals. So there are 3 players, one of them a defenseman. But even Quinn Hughes, his play has dropped a notch, right? Like from where it was and all the talk about this might be the best player in the National Hockey League in the here and now, a week ago, 10 days ago, Quinn has gone a little bit quiet. And it happens. It's a long season. It's a difficult league. I get all of that. But yes, to your point, Blake, now I am having concerns on both ends of the ice. And I would even say, like, the return of Dakota Joshua, and I want to be careful here that I want to give him all the time he needs to ramp up his game. But I think even he would tell you 3 games back, it's been pretty underwhelming. And it really hasn't provided any sort of boost. Hockey Fights Cancer night last night, return to the lineup, should have been emotional on Thursday night. Doesn't have a point, hasn't been shooting the puck, has a couple of hits here, but he really hasn't left any kind of mark. And I go back to that point that if you're in uniform, it's okay to have some degree of expectations. I'll temper mine with Dakota Joshua, but he himself said he didn't want to get back in the lineup until he felt that he could make some sort of impact. And it's been a quiet return from obviously a very serious situation for Dakota Joshua. So we know there's more there, but just in 3 games, it's kind of been like a lot of his teammates.
Goals on this homestand, 3, 2, 4, but with 2 empty netters and 3. Now to goaltending.
But just a sec, Matt, even to take that a little further, like prior to last night, they had a goal from a defenseman in 5 straight games. So you look at those goal totals and you sort of extract the defenseman goal, and they all count. But if we're just looking at forwards who are paid to produce, it's been awfully thin here for a little too long now for the Vancouver Canucks.
And now to goaltending, where great to see She Loves get a victory. Lankinen is showing some cracks. Do you know who's going to start against the Rangers, Jeff? And are we into a world now where it's a little bit more 1A, 1B until Demko gets back?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit on Rink Wide, and I was thinking about it more even today about Kevin Lankinen, and is it some column A and column B where has his play dropped off? is it strictly a result of the play in front of him? And I do think it's a little bit of both here. But like on the homestand, he's running an .850 save percentage. And on the season now, when you think about the spectacular performances early on, he's at .901, which is pretty pedestrian. And just a few too many goals are getting past him. Now, Steven Stamkos has made a lot of goaltenders look foolish over his time in the National Hockey League. Ed Romagnosi hammers the one-timer there. So, I mean, those are big-time shots from big-time players. But even at that, there's somewhere in there you would have liked one more save. He gives up 4 on 20 shots last night. Nothing he could really do about the first goal. But, he's dropped back-to-back games for the first time as a Canuck. 3 of his last 4. He's come out on the wrong end of the results. So there's been some slippage in his play without a doubt. And, yeah, I think it was encouraging for Artur Silovs. Like, yes, it's the Blackhawks, so we can say whatever we want. They are terrible. But there were some moments there. And that game was hanging in the balance, and he was forced to make some saves, and he did. And so when you look at the weekend, I think Artur Silovs can come out of the weekend feeling better about his performance than a lot of his teammates. But I don't know that I'm throwing him to the New York Rangers, just given the way that they are playing. They come in off a shutout win down in Seattle. I think they're 11-4-1 now. They're getting the day off as well, so they'll be rested and ready to go. We've been talking about this for a while, guys, that this soft schedule for the Vancouver Canucks and the Rangers kind of stood out as, the outlier, as a team with legitimate cup contending hopes here. Canucks now have to rise up and beat the New York Rangers just to go 500 on this 6-game homestand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the challenge here. I would think that Kevin Lankinen probably gets the net. Again, I'm putting a little more blame on the group in front of him and all the breakdowns. But he's got to be better. And he has been. And he's one of the reasons they have the record they do. But, boy, if this team continues to play in spurts and not put forth an entire effort, they're going to flush a lot of the goodwill that they built up in the early going so far this season.
You ready for Brandstrom Myers right off the face-off? And then, again, you don't put...
Where would they be without Brandstrom?
Where would they be without a waiver wire pickup?
Yeah, exactly.
Where would... you're not putting DPD in against the Rangers either, are you?
I don't think so.
No.
This weekend felt like a soft landing if you'd really wanted to give him an opportunity in the National Hockey League against a couple of teams that just struggle mightily to score goals. Predators are better than their record, and maybe this is a win that'll kickstart them. We'll see. But the Blackhawks are just brutal. The Blackhawks have scored 1 goal in regulation in 5 straight games now.
Poor Connor Bedard, honestly.
Yeah, and he had a tough night himself. But yeah, the surroundings there are not conducive to a lot of growth for a young star player. They brought DPD up on sort of an emergency basis, or at least there was some thinking they didn't have an extra healthy defenseman. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back, and especially the way that they've manipulated the cap here on a day off for the team. Why would you keep him up on the roster? So I'd be surprised. We don't know about Vinny Desharnais. He was injured in the Islanders game. He was out skating on his own on Saturday morning, but he didn't play either game this weekend. I'm not sure that he's the answer to what ails the Vancouver Canucks, but he and Brandstrom together have formed a pretty solid third pairing. So the question becomes, do we get to a point in time where they're willing to elevate Erik Brandstrom? We know what this coaching staff thinks. We know what this coaching staff likes in terms of the big giant redwoods back on defense. I have trouble thinking that Adam Foote and Rick Tocchet would be willing to have 2 undersized puck movers as your top 2 guys on the left side. But if it is a results-oriented business, I get that Brandstrom has succeeded in sheltered minutes, but maybe it is time to take the training wheels off and give him a shot higher in the lineup and break up Soucy and Myers, because it just feels like the market is screaming for those 2 guys to be separated. Doesn't have to be permanent, but in the here and now, it's just not working for them and for this hockey club. So why in the world do you just keep running them out there night after night after night with the same results?
Julesen's numbers were pretty good last night too. So, he might be able to make Soucy better. Who knows?
The answer here is trade for Marcus Pettersson, play him with Elias Pettersson, and then we could have a goal, Pettersson from Pettersson and Pettersson.
I like it. You've got the original. Then you'd have DPD. Would this be 3 PD? What would we call another Pettersson on the Vancouver Canucks?
I know. And I feel
I'm here for the anecdote.
And I feel like DPD has been bullied into Elias just so he's different.
Completely,
than
he
Elias.
has. That's not the name.
Honestly.
The funny thing there, guys, is the NHL registry can't handle this. Like if you look at no, it can't. If you look at the NHL website, there's an NHL media website that shows the current roster up to the minute.
Yeah.
And it's showing 2 Elias Petterssons from the same hometown, same weight, same height, same number. It can't. It's like we can't do this. Yeah. We cannot have 2 guys with the same name. So
on the same team,
same team, just can't do it. We'll just pretend like the first Paterson was cloned. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We'll be listening rink-wide tomorrow after the Rangers game, and then they're off on the road again, back east. Some afternoon starts next week.
Yeah,
appreciate this.
Crazy. Have you noticed it's kind of crazy scheduling? Like a 6-game homestand, followed by a 6-game road trip, followed by another 6-game homestand. Like schedule maker didn't feel terribly creative. He just putting these blocks in for the Vancouver Canucks. So yes, 1 more here on the homestand, and then out on the road for 6 in a row.
It has been a super weird schedule to date, Jeff, and you're right. It just continues here through the first half of the season. Is very odd schedule for the Canucks until Friday.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks.